All right, guys, welcome to episode 15 of Aussies Taking Over the NBA. We are going to do an Andrew Bogut wrap today, looking back at his career. By all means, not over, but it's good to look at his time in the NBA and see where he came from and what the future holds. Just remember that you can find us on Oz NBA Takeover on Twitter, Aussie NBA Takeover on
Facebook.
Facebook, and if you type in Aussies Taking Over the NBA, it comes up pretty much first thing on YouTube as well. So if you're listening from work or somewhere you can stream on YouTube, that's the place to do it. SoundCloud also at Oz NBA Takeover. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so Andrew Bogut was is a centre who started his career, was drafted number one for Milwaukee Bucks.
So it's Australia's first number one pick ever.
Yeah. And he is a 7 foot, 260-pound centre. He went to the University of Utah, so that's where he was drafted from. And his debut was November 1, 2005, and he played for 13 years in the NBA. A couple of guys in his draft class, notable players. Chris Paul was drafted for. Raymond Felton, Gerald Green, Nate Robinson, Ersan Ilyasova, Monte Ellis, and Lou Williams as well. So drafted over some stalwarts in the NBA, some guys who went on to have some pretty good careers in the NBA.
And still having good careers.
So yeah, I really enjoyed researching this. I watched Bogut for about 5 years at the Warriors, and his transformation in that team and the rise that he went on with the Warriors. It's something personally that I got to experience, which was really great.
Yeah.
I don't think people understand just how good he really was before that injury.
Yeah, I think that it is a bit lacking of some of the understanding. And when I was kind of doing a bit of research and going back and watching some old videos, his distribution ability for a center is like nothing we've kind of ever seen or ever probably will see again.
Yep.
As the traditional centers kind of going out of the game, and we're really moving towards a faster pace. And if it is a traditional center, he's really a post up center, but not really a distributor. It's a pleasure. I mean, he's by all means not done. We're going to see him in the NBL this year for the Kings.
Yeah, we're going to watch a lot of that. That's going to be great.
That's going to be awesome. It's good for Australian basketball.
Yeah, it's good for him to give back because he also tried to come down and give back to the Kings during the lockout season, and I read a little bit about that.
It was an insurance that killed it at the end.
Yeah, we'll go through that a little bit later on when we get to that part. But yeah, so yeah, I don't think he started out his career as someone who was putting the ball on the floor and a big man who could score. Flashy sort of dunks over other people, like a big man who could really attack in the post. And he ended up, getting that arm injury was probably what changed his career trajectory. I mean, he had a couple of injuries before that. We'll go through some of that. But that arm injury, I think, really changed the way he played. And it sort of coincided with where his career went going to Golden State. He was able to use his IQ and his ability, not necessarily as a scorer, but as a thinking man's big man, to really fit into that team, which was, it was one of the catalysts for that team. Obviously, the backcourt, Steph and Clay and the rest of their team are a great team, Draymond Green as well. But I think he fit that team so well. That is a testament to how good he really was as a basketball player and how high his basketball IQ is, was that he was able to really influence the style. When Steve Kerr came in, there was an anchor there, a defensive anchor, and also someone who could come out and play on the perimeter, which he could be really proud of, to be honest, in my opinion anyway. So,
and Draymond Green gave him a massive shout out in the last week or two, just saying that he is the defender because of Andrew Bogut. Andrew Bogut's the one who took him under his wing, and showed him what it meant to be a defensive player. And that's what Draymond Green's built his career around, is his superior defense.
Yeah, his ability to defend in all aspects. I mean, he's an undersized forward for the position that he plays, but he can defend bigger guys. And that's a testament to Bogut's smarts and Bogut's IQ, that he was able to sort of work with Green and also teach him a thing or two about defending in the post, which was really good. But we'll come to that a little bit later when we get to the section on Golden State. Let's go all the way back to his first season
with Milwaukee.
Yeah, Milwaukee. Terry Stotts was their coach, and they finished 40-42, so not just shy of 50. But they actually made the playoffs that season. They didn't have the greatest team. He started all 82 games. He played 28.6 minutes a game. He scored 9.4 points a game. He had 7 rebounds a game and 2.5 assists per game. He had 12 double-doubles. As a young guy, I was watching a lot of their highlights from back then, and he was putting the ball on the floor a lot more and finishing a lot more of their moves. And obviously, the game back 10 years ago, 12 years ago, was a little bit different. It was slower. There was more action for the big men to sort of play make, post up score. And Bogut seemed to be, from the footage I watched, really adept at putting the ball on the floor in the lane and like going up and scoring, which was something that kind of dried up towards the back end of his career. Like he really stopped dribbling.
Yeah.
And I think that was part of that injury that he got, like I said. But he was known as a tough rebounder, and he was a tough guy on the glass, and he was playing with, a less than stellar cast. He was playing power forward, and the center was Jamal McGlaw, who obviously nobody knows who that is.
Yeah.
The Bucks made the playoffs that year, which was great. They had a 40-42 season. Their playoff run was ended by Detroit, who was a brilliant defensive team back then.
Yeah.
They had won the series. They had won the finals, I think, in 2003-4, a couple of years earlier. And Bogut's first year was completely different to how he finished. He was quite a capable scorer, and from a lot of the footage I watched, really an all-round sort of presence, like not necessarily a defensive anchor yet, but all-round on the offensive end, he was able to influence the game, which for a first-round pick, for a number one pick, it's what you wanted. It's everything you wanted for a number one pick and someone who was set up to have a good career in the NBA, which was pretty good.
Defense wasn't the be-all and end-all back then as well. It's not like it is now. No. Where it's each team is focused on defense first, and then we'll figure out how to actually get to the basket.
Well, it feels like now every single player is a smarter player athletically. Like it's not necessarily their fundamentals; it's how well they can use their body in certain situations, especially around the basket. Sort of how smart their finishing is, how they're able to get their body into certain positions. Because I think players are less dense and more quicker, like able to use their body in different ways, which makes defending harder. And obviously, if you're a crafty finisher around the rim, you're going to get more action.
Well, I think, I definitely think that the NBA, especially in the combine and drafting players, they look for physical presence first, followed very closely by defending ability. I think you can teach someone how to post up moves. You can teach someone to shoot. You can't teach intelligence.
Yeah.
If they're physically adept, they've got good motors, and they know how to defend, the other stuff can be taught. I think that's where you'll see like a lot of these number one picks are defensively. Top 10 picks are defensively superior.
Yeah.
Their attacking may not be there, or they may not be ready for the attacking options in the NBA, but it's definitely a different vibe to 12 years ago. And the coaching stuff, I mean, you have to look at what footage has done in the last 12 years, high definition footage, the ability to slow things down, going to digital. We're much better ability at breaking things down.
Yep.
And I suppose this is where the new guard comes in, the guys who were playing in the 90s, who saw the evolution from the 70s and 80s, have been able to influence players these days a bit more than the areas where they were just told. I mean, you can look at, LeBron and the Cavs and how that's a 90s and noughties team right there.
Yeah, yep.
That's not the modern successful team. I mean, they are successful, don't get me wrong, but it's not the modern standard.
It's not the blueprint
of
that modern team, which obviously going back 10 years, the game's going to be different. And then going back 10 years again, the game's going to be different again. So I think the way, the way Bogut's career developed, like people like to put the tag on him that he was injury prone, quote unquote. I don't really believe that personally. I think he got a couple of unfortunate injuries that forced him to change the way he played just slightly. And I think that arm injury, like I said, kind of rocked his confidence a little bit. But it's a testament again to his IQ of how he was able to adapt his game around that. And physically, back in these 05, 06 season and the 06, 07 season, he was physically a big guy, like a very physical player too, and really liked to bang down low in the post. So obviously, as your career goes on, you get smarter, and you're right. You develop these days a higher IQ through just how many tools you have at your disposal, like to become a cerebral player. And obviously, the teams obviously were different too. Like this, you've got to come into a team and you've probably got a window of 2 or 3 years where you can develop a core and then maybe grow as players before, people start to get traded, or, you start to look at how you are as a player and how you've developed and fit in with a team. Obviously 2 or 3 years is time enough to understand how your teammates and how you play and how everyone plays around you. So we'll move on to the 06, 07 season. He started predominantly playing centre full time then, which I think was probably the best move for him because of his size and his skill. Villanueva and Ilyasova were sharing the load with him, and Dan Gadzuric back then was also doing that. The Bucks didn't have a great season that year. They were 28 and 54, and they fired Terry Stotts 64 games into the season, and Larry Krystkowiak was the guy who stepped in for them. Defensively, they didn't have a great season. I mean, 29th in defensive rating is not great. Bogut, though, had a pretty good season, played 34 minutes a game, 34.2 minutes a game, 12.2 points per game, 8.8 rebounds and 3 assists per game. So, and he had 19 double-doubles. So, he was a force, a growing and driving force in a team that was really developing back then. And it wasn't until at the end of that season where he got that injury, that first injury. He had a sprained left foot against the Lakers, and he played 4 more games, and then he re-injured it. And that was pretty much him out for the end of the season. So I don't think it's not an injury-prone injury. I mean, he's a big man, and big guys tend to get injured more.
Well, look at Joel Embiid. He didn't play a game for 2 years and then got injured halfway through his 3rd season. Big guys take longer to develop. Their bodies are growing. Their bones aren't set. Their muscle structure it's very stretched. And, it takes testosterone a long time to kind of set those things and get their bodies in motion. You won't see big guys really maturing until they're 23, 24. It's like most heavyweight fighters.
Yeah.
They don't mature till their late 20s as a fighter. You'd think it'd be a young man's game, but no, most fighters, when they win their first championship, are in their late 20s.
Yeah.
For a big guy. There's only a couple of those kind of guys that have bucked the trend. So you can understand why big men go through these kind of injuries is the sheer weight going through their body on a hard surface. They're going to get ankle injuries. They're going to get joint injuries. It's just part and parcel of professional basketball. I wouldn't say anyone's more injury prone than anyone else.
No.
Again, it's the type of style you play. If you're going to play an aggressive style, if you're going to back people down, then you're more likely to get taken out from underneath and do an ankle or... That's just the way it is.
Yeah, it is. And that was the type of game he played. Like he was quite a high octane player for the style at the time. I mean, he had a penchant for trying to dunk over people, which, back then was something that you needed. I mean, you also look at their rosters too. They don't have as many options as they do these days for sending players to the G League, like spreading out their roster.
There was no G League back then, was there?
I don't think there was.
So there was no really reserve grade, as we kind of like to call it in Australia.
And there's a lot more room to spread your roster out now these days. Like there's more security, there's more sort of roster flexibility.
There's an ability to sign more people on shorter window contracts as well.
And also sign players and not just have them be your franchise hope straight away.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you look at Simmons, he broke his foot, but they had the chance to just go, right, we'll leave him out for a season. Like, even if he's fit until, like, towards the end of the year, he was kind of fit.
Yeah.
But there was no point really bringing him in. I mean, for personal reasons, obviously, he remained as a rookie. And that's one of the big reasons why they sort of didn't bring him back. But at the same time, a player like Bogut, I don't think back in the mid 2000s would have had the chance to do something like that. Like,
No,
I think they were bringing him back, making sure he was there because he was a big part of their system and a big part of their team, which obviously works against him if you are getting injured and having to rush back.
Well, I think medicine and sports medicine has come far in 12 years as well. They know that injury management's probably the best way to keep a player on the field for the longest time. And, Delhi had most of this season in and out with injuries that he could have tracked back earlier, but, the coaching staff decide to keep and really reduce minutes as well.
Yeah.
And it's about managing serious injury a lot better, and a lot more science has developed in that time, especially in the world of sports medicine.
Yeah, so they fired Terry Stotts at the end of that season, and Larry Christowiak comes in, and he takes over for the 07-08 season. So Bogut had a pretty good off-season and came into the season rehabilitated. Their starting lineup for that season was Mo Williams, Michael Redd, Bobby Simmons, E.G. Yan Lian, Chinese guy,
Oh, yeah.
and Bogut, obviously. So if you look at last year, he averaged 12 points per game, and then coming into this season, he plays 78 games, 34.9 minutes, 14.3 points, 9.8 rebounds, and 2.6 assists per game, and 1.7 blocks per game, which is another part of his arsenal was defense at the rim. Obviously it's the third season. He comes in and he's upping his totals every season. So he's developing personally and in the organization. They're able to rely on him a little bit more this season, making 78 starts. So he had a career high in points and career high rebounds, and he had 38 double-doubles. So very influential in that season.
That's a good center season.
Yeah. He tallied a career high 29 points against the Phoenix Suns in December, and he finished 9th in NBA blocks and 11th in NBA rebounding, 12th in double-double. So that's a great personal season for him. Like a fantastic effort for a big man. And I think he was coming off contract at the end of that season. So Larry Harris was their GM. I think he got fired, and then Larry Christowiak got fired at the end of that season. And the Bucks were going to offer him a new deal. So he signed a 5-year extension with the Bucks worth $60 million in guaranteed money. So that's a big investment into one of our players, or Bogut, as a center, like as a pretty much a franchise cornerstone player. I think their highest paid player was Michael Redd at the time, who was on a $13 million deal, $13 million a season. So that's a big. It
shows quality.
Yeah,
and it shows he was the pivotal part of their growth and development, and they were building a team around him. Very much what like they're doing at Philly.
Yeah. On to 08-09. That was when he had his first real massive injury.
Yeah, stress fracture.
Big injury for a big man. Stress fractures are a big deal.
Yeah, and they're kind of something that it's pretty common. And
it's just physical development. Yeah. It's you're never really going to avoid it, I think, and especially in a high energy sort of a lot of pounding on the court.
Yeah,
and also sort of in the 2000s there was a lot. Like I remember in cricket there was a lot of players getting stress fractures as well.
Mitchell Stark's probably the most Pat Cummins. His like first 4 years were just back stress fractures.
Yeah,
it's just you have to look at what goes through in cricket as opposed to basketball. Basketball's probably a little bit easier on the lower back, but when you land as a fast bowler on the front foot, you're putting about 1.5 tons of direct force through your lumbar spine, and that is going to lead to issues. And again, your bones aren't fully really developed until you're about 23, 24.
Yeah.
So young guys are going to pick up stress fractures. It's just part and parcel of it.
So he only played 36 games that season. He played the first 31 and then injured his back. And he tried twice to come back. And Scott Skiles pretty much sat him down and just said, look, get your body right and, make sure you can come back next season. And this is where I think, the first sort of, is he injury prone? He's just signed a big deal and then gotten injured. Is this, is this a big deal sort of thing?
Yeah.
Are we seeing the sort of the first cracks of someone like that? But I just think he's a bit unlucky. Like for a big guy having to carry a lot of the load, it's a tough sort of thing to do at that age. I mean, he was only 24.
But again, it's we look at the Joel Embiid kind of similarities. He got a max extension off one season, really playing one season.
Yeah.
25 million a year. And so back in the time, it was the same thing. He was showing so much promise as a franchise player that they were willing to do anything to keep him there. And, just getting your body healthy at the time was the most important thing.
Yeah, so in those 31 games, you're still averaging a double-double. So
yeah, quality.
I think it was representing the fact that Milwaukee putting their money into Bogut was probably a good thing. It is a real shame that he was getting those injuries, because I think his career at this stage is really starting to take off. I mean, Milwaukee, I think they made the playoffs the next season.
Yeah.
When he was back again. Like he played most of the games. So obviously they were getting somewhere with him as a player and really developing as a team. It was just these freak sort of things that were happening. So I still don't think injury prone is something that
that's that's the issue with building a team around a center.
Yeah.
As opposed to a point guard or a shooting guard who can take the ball and as a ball handler. If you build around the center, they are injury prone. That is the nature of the position. It's the nature of being large as well. And I think that's why teams are very reluctant. There's probably 3 centers in the league that are on any kind of decent money now. Son Whiteside, Joel Embiid, and Tristan Thomas, which is terrible, but
Boogie Cousins and
Boogie.
AD. But Boogie got injured, and he doesn't have a big history of looking after his body.
No.
AD has had a few little injuries too, starting to get a couple of little injuries, but they're really sort of a different breed of attacking player from what Bogut was. Really, like AD is very shot intensive. He's a very shot intensive player. Boogie and even Embiid, they're both able to play away from the basket with some sort of ability. I mean, Bogut's never really had a jump shot.
No,
and that is important to a player's development, but obviously as a center, it never really mattered.
No, and back then it mattered even less.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect sort of setup for him to not have a jump shot. I mean, now if you don't have a jump shot as a big man, you're not really going to make it in this type of league.
You're playing 15 minutes a night, potentially defending when their big guy comes on to see if it changed anything up. It's a move for move player rather than a team leading or a franchise leading player.
So that 08-09 season, after he gets that back injury, it's a wasted season for him. I mean, he's still putting up decent enough numbers. And then they go into the 09-10 season, and he comes back from those injury troubles. And I think he was starting at center. He had Ilyasova playing power forward, and that's when Ilyasova starts to sort of develop as a player as well. And they have a 46-36 season under Scott Skiles. Brendan Jennings also, I think they drafted Brendan Jennings that year. Michael Redd, he got injured and he only played 18 games in the season. So it was a bit of a sort of injury-plagued season. They also had a defensive rating of 103.1, which is second in the league. So it showed you that having Bogut on the court was really important. He played 69 games. He averaged 32.9 minutes a game and 15.9 minutes per game. 10.2 rebounds per game and 2.5 blocks a game. He also, I think, that was when he got that arm injury. So at the end of that season, that was when he got that arm injury, and it was the big. And
of course, they go on to lose first round of the playoffs as well.
Yeah. So that was a big reason. They had a great defensive season, and he gets that freak injury, that arm injury, that just changes the trajectory of his career.
Yeah,
which is pretty big. He's on a fast break, and Amari Stoudemire, kind of pushed him out of the air a little bit. It's kind of the cardinal rule. You saw it this season with Horford, where J.R. Smith pushed Al Horford. It's kind of a cardinal rule, man.
You don't do it just because
just
the
don't
risk
do
of
it.
injury is too high.
Yeah.
Especially with these, and they're big guys falling. You know, something's going to happen.
And he landed awkwardly and broke his hand, dislocated his elbow, and sprained his wrist.
Look, when Ben Simmons got pushed out of the air, flipped on his back, and got up and started running, you're just thinking,
yeah,
it's got to be it's got to be automatic red card. It's got to be automatic flagrant. When they're willfully pushing people out of the air,
something like that.
Yeah,
it's just the fine lines between a dangerous injury like Bogut's and Horford. Not going to ground
potentially for him at 32 years old. If he does a knee, he's not coming back from that.
Yeah. So they got to the playoffs, as you said. They lost 4-3 against the Hawks. I think a big reason for that loss was probably the lack of that defensive rim protection in Bogut, which, number 2 defense in the league for that season. It was a blow. And I think he was out for about a month and a half and then had to have rehabilitation getting back into the preseason. So it wasn't as though it was like a nothing injury that somebody could sort of recover from. It was a big injury, and it really changed the trajectory of his game basically. So the 2010-2011 season, after the rehabilitation on the arm injury, there was some speculation that Bogut's career could be severely limited by this injury. The Bucks started the season with Jennings, Delfino, Gooden, and Bogut as the starting 5, and Bogut would miss 5 games in December with back spasms. Obviously, some muscle injury stuff related probably to those stress fractures.
82 games a year, you have to remember, is punishing on anyone's body.
Oh, it's a lot of games. So the Bucks would struggle again under Scott Skiles. They finished 35 and 47. Their defensive rating was still quite good, and their opponent's points rating was pretty good, so 3rd and 4th in the league. So it showed you their defense was pretty solid. It was just kind of their scoring, really lacked. And obviously Bogut is not a very dynamic scorer, not a really solid post player. For some of the guys at the time, Amari Stoudemire had a bigger range of sort of back to the basket post moves, and he wasn't a jump shooter. So it kind of having him on the court not necessarily sort of killed their offense, but there was a problem there in his scoring even before the injury. He wasn't a dynamic scorer. He had to put the ball on the floor in the post to sort of set himself up for moves. And 12.8 points a game for a center, it's not groundbreaking stuff.
It's not, no, by any stretch of the imagination. It's not franchise making.
But defensively, he was great. Like, his ability to read shots and block shots was was great all through his career. It was fantastic.
Phenomenal.
Great timing. So he did play 35.3 minutes per game, 12.8 points per game, 11.1 rebounds per game, and he had a career high blocks, 2.6 per game this season. So again, that defensive IQ was important for the Bucks' success. That arm injury
held him up.
But on the offensive end, I don't know how you can come back from something like that, like a really debilitating injury that takes away one of the biggest aspects of your play around the rim. I don't know how you sort of come back from that so quickly and have it show in the numbers and have it show in your team. That really is probably an injury that it might take you a year to really resettle on.
It's IQ, it's intelligence, and it's basketball know-how. He's changed his game to get the most out of what he can do with the assets that he have, and not being able to be as aggressive on the rim, but being able to, post up successfully. Ball movement, I mean, watching some of Bogut's ability to move the ball for a big guy is phenomenal.
Especially later in his career when he got to the Warriors. So the 11-12 season was the lockout season. I did a little bit of reading on the lockout. It was, fascinating stuff to read back on. I don't know. Do you want a little spiel on what happened during the lockout?
Yeah. So on August 2nd, 2011, the NBA filed two unfair labor practice claims against the NBPA, one at the NLRB and the other at the Federal District Court in New York. The
So,
league, yeah,
so just imagine that you're playing every season. You turn up for work and suddenly the NBA just says, yeah, no, we filed a lawsuit against the union, basically the player union, and it's wow, like okay, like what do we do now? So, the union and owners met on September 13 to negotiate. So that's a whole month where they're just sitting around like, okay, the season's going to happen. Yep, this is is everything going to just be the same? Like imagine that. Imagine sitting there for a month thinking, oh well, is the season even going to go ahead?
Yeah.
Like this is crazy stuff. So eventually, I think there were some players who filed lawsuits. So Carmelo, I'll just skim through it because there's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
Like Carmelo, Billups had one lawsuit, and then Tolliver and Gordon and Butler had another lawsuit. Like just crazy stuff. Players suing the league basically.
Yeah.
Because of this lockout stuff. So eventually they sorted it all out. They renegotiated the whole CBA basically. They dissolved the union. Then they got they recommissioned the union and then signed a new CBA, which had a whole bunch of different sort of stuff in it. It had some salary stuff, and that was when the G League was formed. And there was some other stuff, some amnesty stuff and some waivers stuff, and then there was MVP stuff for rookies that was added into it. So it's pretty crazy stuff when you think of watching games. Like we sit here and watch games, but just the amount of stuff that's going on in the background, really, when you think about it, it's just so much.
Yeah, the NBA salary cap has to be one of the most convoluted. You have to have a degree in economics, accounting, and law to understand it. It's just
it's really crazy
how they keep under the luxury tax. And so you look at some teams' rosters, you think, how the fuck do they actually keep under this tax? And then you look at other teams who are so far over the luxury tax limit with the worst players and poor playing depth. And it's so convoluted. But again, it's just so players get paid more money. Realistically, it's all about the players and them getting their commercial value worth out of the NBA. And you have to remember, most of these guys make most of their salary from endorsements, not from the actual NBA. It's endorsement deals, ads. The collective bargaining agreement is really to help the guys that are 12-year vets playing on rosters getting some sort of minimum agreement, and that falling outside the cap space.
Yeah,
because
like it's to reward the guys who have been there for a while with the honors of being able to negotiate their salary with other teams, which is pretty important. It's also there to protect the young guys from basically signing stupid contracts, which is also fair enough. So during the lockout, 2011, Bogut chose to return home to Australia to play in the NBL I think he was originally linked with the Gold Coast Blaze and the 36ers, and then the Sydney Kings. So ultimately he chose the Kings, but the insurance to cover his remaining $39 million contract with the Bucks could not be resolved. Like obviously the NBL doesn't have that type of crazy money that the NBA was making. So it could not be resolved, leaving the Kings and the NBL without his on-court services. Following the breakdown in contract negotiations over the insurance money, Bogut stated that he would like to join the Kings coaching staff in a bid not only to help the club but to raise the NBA's profile. So good on him for at least sticking around, because I kind of remember that.
Yeah.
But I kind of remember him being in the real hype that was kind of Bogut's come back. Like, this is great. Not really understanding anything about the lockout at the time and what's really happening. But I kind of remember at the time thinking, oh, wow, like he's going to play for the Kings. We should go watch that. And then like it falling over and just being like, oh, whatever. Like, yeah, okay, whatever. He's not playing.
Not really understanding why. But you can understand why insurance is not going to pay out a $39 million contract on an NBL unknown kind of deal, because he would have had to have left the NBL and gone straight back to the Bucks if the collective bargaining agreement was signed, which it was anyway.
Yeah.
But he always expressed his desire to finish his career in Australia. He always wanted a couple of seasons here to finish things off.
And that's important because it tells you the type of player that's not just chasing things for himself, someone who's willing to give back to the sport and finds it important. I mean, we've seen a couple of the guys that are in this year's draft, Landale, and I think it might have been Matur Maker as well, have worked out with Bogut in his camps over in the US. So it shows that, as someone who wants to give back to the game, like his heart's in the right spot. So there's rewards that go along with having that kind of mindset. Like if you have a selfish mindset all your life, obviously you're going to just play for yourself and then disappear out of the game, and you're not going to give your knowledge back to other people, like stuff like Draymond Green and, even working out Jock Landale and stuff like that. Like giving knowledge to these young guys is really important for Australian development.
I honestly think one day he'll be the Boomers coach.
Yeah.
He'll get an NBL franchise and he'll end up coaching the Boomers. And I think that would be a great day for Australian basketball.
So his season would end abruptly in just 12 games against the Houston Rockets on the 25th of January, fractured his ankle, and that was a bad injury. I saw some footage of that. I don't like watching injuries, and I saw some of that, and it was not nice. He landed on Kyle Lowry's foot. It would keep him out of the rest of the season and result on stumps being pulled on his Bucks career. So that season he made 12 starts. In the lockout season, he had 11.3 points per game, 8.3 rebounds per game, and he had 3 double-doubles. So in the 2012 and 13 season, his whole future and his whole career would completely change. On the 13th of March in 2012, Bogut and Steven Jackson were traded to the Golden State Warriors in exchange for Monte Ellis, Ekpe Udoh, and Kwame Brown. That's a terrible trade. Just quietly. According to the Warriors, he underwent surgery in April to clean up his ankle. I remember that, actually. I remember watching at the time thinking, oh, wow, like Bogut's coming to the Warriors. It's awesome. I'll be able to watch Bogut. Because I started watching the Warriors the year before he came there. And it was like, wow, like awesome. Like he's coming here. That's awesome. I get to watch this guy type of thing. And I remember they just changed their ownership when they made this trade. So they'd put about 4 or 5 years into Monte Ellis. No, was it? It was the same amount of time as Bogut. So what's that? That's 7 years into Monte Ellis. And Steph Curry had just come into the club, into the franchise, and they essentially basically said, we're going with Curry, we're going to trade Monte Ellis. And the fans did not like that one bit. Like,
no.
I remember watching a jersey sort of, I think it was Mullen's retirement presentation, his jersey retirement, and the fans were booing the owners and stuff. And I remember just, this is bad. Like, this has started really bad because it was their first season. And essentially trading away Ellis was pretty big. He was kind of like the face of their franchise at the time. But, I was watching some of the footage of early Steph Curry and just seeing how scrawny and small he was, remembering just how far they've come, it was great. I was like, wow, I can't believe when they did that. Just look at Curry then.
Yeah.
How small and scrawny. You would have looked at that guy and just go, this guy's going to be a double MVP, a unanimous MVP. No, not a chance.
The Jonathan Thurston of basketball.
Yeah, so he went and had that surgery, and he played the first 4 games of the season. And I remember that and just going, he doesn't look right.
No.
He does not look right. And he had 6 points and 3.8 rebounds, and then he finished. He was pretty much out after that. I remember at that time just going, he does not look right. Like something's happened. He's not responded to that surgery. Something's happened. So he had Regenikine done, PRP treatment, which was what I need in my shoulders. To add something to fix my shoulders and fix my jump shot. He had his recovery in late November, and it was revealed that procedure was more serious. So he had microfracture in his ankle that he had repaired, and the bone spurs that he had repaired. It was more serious than previously
ankles
thought.
Are fucked injuries.
Yeah, so he returned on the 28th of January, and he scored 12 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists on his return. He had 4 blocks. Like, noticeably, his defense in that team was really sort of noticeable in the way Mark Jackson ran his offense. Like Mark Jackson's offense wasn't that great. It was a lot of sort of Steph ball dominant and Clay ball dominant. Not necessarily isolation, but just a lot of them on ball movement to sort of create their own stuff. And it wasn't really using Bogut right. It wasn't using him properly. He's a very smart pick and roll player, good at rolling to the basket, good at slipping screens as well. And obviously having him handle the ball at the 3-point line was obviously, this was kind of found out in Steve Kerr's offense.
Yeah.
Was just his ability to handle the ball. Obviously, it wasn't something that Mark Jackson was really utilizing that well at the time. So they went to the playoffs that year, and that was their run against Denver where they beat them 4-2. So that was their first real, Golden State's real sort of glimpse of there's a future for this team type of thing. That conference win against the Denver Nuggets. I don't think they'd been to the playoffs since the 2008 We Believe team. So they beat Denver 4-2, and Bogut had a great series because he was up against JaVale McGee and Kenneth Faried, like two really good rim protectors. So in that season, he had 5.8 points per game, 7.7 rebounds per game, and 2.1 assists per game. So he started all 6 games of that Denver series. He averaged 27.4 minutes per game, 8.1 points per game, and 10.3 rebounds per game, and 2 blocks per game. So in a series featuring JaVale McGee and Kenneth Faried, that's a fantastic performance to out-rebound them and have 2.3 blocks a game is just amazing. It's great stuff. Like, they're great stats.
And then you look at the Spurs, and you look at that Spurs team, and you think, shit.
That was
why they lost that.
And that was prime Spurs. And you could see in that Warriors team at the time, they weren't ready yet. You could see, you could feel the fact that they weren't quite ready. And they came up against that Spurs team. I think they won the first game in San Antonio. And it was like slapping a guy and then he beats you up. Type of thing. Yeah. Like you awoke the beast and you angered him, and then they just beat on the Warriors. And he started 5 games. He started all 5 games of the Spurs series. He had 26.4 minutes per game, 6.1 points per game, and 11.5 rebounds per game, but only 0.6 blocks per game. So he didn't get many blocks in the series. And a series with Tim Duncan, obviously, he's a very, very proficient post scorer. You're not going to, and Kawhi and Parker and Janelle, like very, very good scorers at the rim. You know, you're going to sort of struggle.
In that series.
And I think Baines might have been in that team back then, but he might have been at the G League at the time. So that Spurs team would eventually go to the finals and lose to the Heat. So they were, you could see they weren't ready. They weren't ready to take that next step, and it was obvious to me that what Bogut brought
wasn't being used properly.
Well, not to the full extent, but you couldn't see that yet. Like, you couldn't see it at the time. I didn't remember thinking, oh, he's being wasted here. I remember just sort of thinking, something's not right. It's not quite working. It's good, but can it be better? And obviously they played with quite a quick pace. Like, they had the 4th best pace in the league. So with fast players like Curry and Clay, he was able to develop his defensive ability with some guys that were quick, very good handlers and very good scorers. And even that roster, I mean, at that time wasn't great. Like, it wasn't, with Steph and Clay, it wasn't fantastic still. Like, the rest of the roster was still a little bit all over the place. So the 2013 and 14 season, they had a 51-31 season under Mark Jackson, which was, again, another growth year. I think they 47-35 the previous season, so 51-31. Yeah. And their defensive numbers were starting to go up. So the defensive rating went up to 4th out of the league, and their pace was about the same. So he had a shoulder injury sort of halfway through the season. I kind of remember that. And then a groin injury sort of near the end of the season. And he played 67 games, 7.3 points per game, 10 rebounds, 2.1 assists per game, and 1.8 blocks per game. And the problem was, at the end of that season, he actually broke his rib. He had a cracked rib against Portland, and he played like he apparently cracked it before that, and then he played through it.
Yeah.
Which
it's not smart.
No, and in that I can understand why. In that team, it's very, you've just seen sort of Clay this series against the Cavs really injure his ankle badly and play through it.
Yeah.
Because that's part of their culture is to not let anyone know you're hurt and not let the team down. Like strength in numbers is their motto. It's like, you need to be tough and play through your things. And obviously I think he copped an elbow from LaMarcus Aldridge really late in that Portland game. It was an overtime. I think it was an overtime loss, and he copped an elbow. And obviously that was it for the rest of the season. He was out, and that was a huge, huge blow. They had to rely on an ancient Jermaine O'Neal and Mo Spates and David Lee. And, Jermaine O'Neal's old. Mo Spates is not a great rim protector, and David Lee's not a great defender either. And, Festus Ezeli and Draymond Green weren't mature enough and ready to take the load. And in a series against the Clippers, which they lost 4-3 against the Clippers, against DeAndre Jordan, prime DeAndre Jordan, Chris Paul, and Blake Griffin.
Yeah.
It's a tough,
JJ as well.
Tough sort of season. Yeah, JJ Redick. I was going to say Barea, but it was Redick. And JJ Redick was just on fire that series. I just remember the next season. I just remember after that series just being like, you JJ Redick.
Oh, he can score, can't he?
He can't miss. He couldn't miss in that series. And they really missed him. They really missed having Bogut in that, because I think he would have at least had another body to sort of throw at DeAndre Jordan and keep him off the glass. And but all in all, it was, another year of growth for that team, and another year of growth, maybe not statistically for Bogut, but I was actually quite shocked at the end of that season that they actually sacked Mark Jackson, which would prove, obviously, to be the ultimate in great decision in hiring Steve Kerr, the ultimate sort of just roll the dice on sacking a coach who took them to their only 2 playoff appearances in 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, it's
ballsy. It's ballsy because no other team would do that. But they must have seen something was lacking, even if a guy's taking you to the promised land and you're not getting there. And they wanted more out of their team.
Well, it kind of really mirrored that Monte Ellis decision, like to gamble on Curry and then sort of draft Clay and then draft Harrison Barnes after that. It felt like the same decision. Like, we know what we've got, but we're going to roll the dice on something better. And then they kind of had come up a little bit trumps on the Curry, like rolling the dice on Curry. So maybe they sort of thought they'd roll the dice again. So Jackson was fired. And Steve Kerr was brought in, and obviously we all know how that ends, that season. But instantly you could see that this team had been transformed and that Bogut was a pivotal piece as a center in this team. Like, he didn't have to handle the ball. Suddenly he was coming out to the three-point line to handle, and set sort of holding the ball, like on-ball screens for other players. Curry running around. Steve Kerr transformed that team using the pace that Mark Jackson had Curry and Clay playing, putting Bogut in that center position and using him as an on-ball screener. Just complete, like it made that defense that offense so much better. Being able, like, just for how good of a passer he was that season, it transformed their entire team. Like, Steph and Clay are obviously brilliant shooters, like great players, all-round point guard and all-round shooting guard that can do almost anything. Couple that with a player like Bogut, who was setting good screens, rolling to the rim, even sort of slipping screens off pin downs, and as an extra man, rolling to the hoop, getting like long lobs. Another way they were using him, and being able to finish at the rim, like finish lobs and stuff. I mean, it transformed his own game because he didn't have to put the ball on the floor. He didn't have to score in the post. He knew every time he had the ball in the post, looking out for other options was just as good a move as, trying to put up a shot. He had other guys to put up shots with.
If I can just go and watch the highlights reel of Bogut at the Warriors. It's about 6 minutes on YouTube,
and there's a Steph Curry and Bogut chemistry, and that's another great.
That's pretty cool. The around the back passing.
Yeah, and even like through the legs screen.
Yeah.
Even sort of their elevator play where they're 2 forward screen for a guy that runs out through the key between two guys. Stuff like that. Being able to screen is really important. I think that's one sort of thing that it's not being utilized all that much. Like obviously the Warriors have really transformed that type of screening action.
Yeah.
Just really smart pin downs, like facing the baseline, pinning players down, like slipping pin downs is one of the really big things that Bogut excelled from. Like especially on the wing, he'd screen for Clay off the ball, and the gravity of Clay would mean that he'd be able to run to the hoop because two guys would follow Clay, obviously.
Yeah.
It also made Clay and Curry a lot better players. Like trusting a big guy to handle the ball out near the perimeter makes you a lot better. Like knowing this guy's going to screen for you if you're going to come off it and shoot, or knowing this guy can find you on a cut if you give him the ball and run around him and cut again. He was finding players like that, and his passing was fantastic that season. So his defensive ability as well that season was great. I mean, he was probably their best defensive player. Draymond Green wasn't quite that player yet. Iguodala was playing small forward. He was starting small forward, and he was more of an all-round player. He was less of the defensive juggernaut that he kind of is known for today. But Bogut was basically having to protect the rim at all times, which was perfect for him. Having Green's a great at boxing out too.
Yeah.
And that was important. I think they had David Lee kind of coming off the bench, and that was another big thing where David Lee had played so many seasons in the league. And Iguodala as well had played a lot of seasons. Both of those suddenly just go to the bench. It's like you have to go to the bench and play off the bench. And I mean, to have an ego that lets you just go, right, I'm going to do what it takes for this team is another important aspect of that. So defensively, the team had the pieces to defend. It had Draymond Green straight into the lineup, boxing out, and then Bogut blocking shots.
Yeah.
And it was the perfect combination because Draymond Green's a great defender, a great all-round defender, and great at defending guys oversized. So when he was defending his man, Bogut could always sort of play safety and just kind of sit there, wait, hunt blocks, and do stuff like that, which was perfect. So Bogut that season had 65 starts, 58 wins. They had 9 losses. He had 6 double-doubles that season as well. So he had some knee issues at the start of that season too, but he came back strong, and he sat out the last 2 games as well. He missed those 2 games kind of, just to rest. Yeah. Just smart stuff.
Rested up.
That's another thing about Kerr. It's like he has the presence to just go have a seat for a couple of days and rest.
He's the all-round player manager. No one player is bigger than the team.
So Bogut personally that season, he had 65 starts, 23.3 minutes a game, 6 points per game, 8.1 rebounds per game, 2.7 assists per game, and 1.7 blocks per game. I think 2.7 was pretty close to his career best
in
terms of assists, which, running in that offense with how deadly that offense was, it obviously makes sense having deadly shooters.
Playoffs.
Yeah, so they went to the playoffs. They beat the Pelicans. He had a pretty big hand in that. 27 minutes per game, 6.2 points per game, 9 rebounds per game against Anthony Davis too. Anthony Davis, obviously, a few years undercooked. Yep, definitely. 2.2 assists per game and 2 blocks per game. That's pretty big, having 2 blocks a game in a series like that.
Yeah, this is Anthony Davis with no 3-point shot, by the way.
Yeah, so he wasn't shooting as much. I think he's really developed his
the 3 points in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah, mid-range
game. The arc game is phenomenal now.
The team battled back from 20 points down in that fourth quarter against New Orleans in Game 3 to win, to tie the game and send it to overtime and eventually win, which was, pretty crazy stuff. And it was kind of a sign of just how special that team was in general. So on to Memphis. He played all of those games. He had 24.6 minutes per game, 4.7 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, 1.8 assists per game, and 2 blocks per game. So Memphis was that series that they went down 2-1. They lost the game at home, the second game at home, and it was kind of the first time in that season where it looked like there were cracks in their armor because they had a historic season. I think it was 67-15, finishing first in the league. It was the first time you're starting to see, oh wow, there's cracks in this team. Maybe they're not quite ready yet. But they came back. They made adjustments, and they learned from it. And they stole home court back in Memphis. Curry hit a crazy sort of, I think it was about a 65-foot three to end one of the quarters, like crazy stuff. And Bogut played pretty well in that series. Defensively against Zach Randolph and Marc Gasol, two very, very seasoned, very good big men.
Yeah.
But they're, grits and grind. That's what Memphis at the time were known as, grits and grind. Like a series like that is going to obviously be taxing on Bogut, who is playing through some little injuries.
Nigglies.
Yeah. So then they went into the Western Conference Finals against Houston, where against Dwight Howard, I'm pretty sure that season, he had 21.5 minutes per game, 5.2 points per game, 9.2 rebounds per game, 2 assists a game, and then 1.8 blocks per game. So dueling basically against Howard. Howard was in his prime then too. I mean, maybe a couple of years past his prime.
But a good solid big man.
Right, a great
unit.
Crafty big man. Yeah. And with James Harden too, like that's another difficult guy to guard at the rim. He's always looking for contact, always looking to score around big men. He had a great series defensively. Howard and Bogut both finished with 9 blocks, but Dre was the big sort of bonus in that. He had 9 blocks as well. Like it was
starting to learn.
Yeah, starting to get
Padawan.
And Draymond's sort of development in that series would be the precursor to defending LeBron James against the Cavs when they go on to play the Cavs in the finals. So they made the finals that season for the first time in 40 years, which is
pretty phenomenal,
pretty crazy stuff when you think about it.
First year Steve Kerr coaching, and they've just made that move, and they make the finals.
And like for how good Steph can play and Iguodala and Draymond Green and guys sort of fitting in, I still think Bogut was a massive part of that. Not to sort of keep harping on about, but it's kind of an unsung thing that his ability was able to transform those two guys and sort of make them better players. So in the finals, Kyrie got injured in game 1, which was a massive blow to the Cavs. It just meant kind of Mozgov would play more minutes down the end of the season, sort of down through the end of the series, and obviously guarding LeBron James is difficult at the best of times.
At the best of times, even where Kyrie goes game 1. Yeah, it swings in your favor. Things part for you.
And Kevin Love had been injured sort of previously. I think he was injured the first round. He broke his arm. I think Kelly Olynyk broke his arm from memory. And so defending LeBron James is tough for any team. And you've got to have a lot of speed. You've got to have a lot of foot speed and a lot of power to sort of meet his power. And that was kind of where Draymond Green started to really grow into the player that he is now. And it also meant that the Warriors were playing a lot more small ball in the death lineup, which meant Draymond Green was playing center and Iguodala was playing small forward, and Iguodala was playing power forward and Barnes was playing small forward, which meant Bogut pretty much got pushed out of that series, which that's just kind of another testament to his character.
Yeah. And the changing game as well. It's definitely not a big man game like it used to be. And if it is a big man game, you've got to be able to shoot.
He even said, I was watching the season DVD, and he even said that Steve Kerr came to him and said, "You're probably not going to play the last couple of games." And Bogut sort of went, "Yeah, well, that's fine. Anything like we do whatever it takes to win type of thing," which is another testament to his character and his ability. And obviously, they'd triumph. At the end of that series, they'd take it all the way back to Cleveland and triumph in Cleveland. And the reward was a ring, like another NBA champion, which totally deserved. Like
first one since Luke Longley.
Yeah, completely deserved. And he had such a huge huge influence on that season, offensively and defensively, that his ring was completely deserved. Like his play transformed their offense to basically a number 1 in offensive rating, number 1 in defensive rating, number 1 in pace, second, sorry, in offensive rating, first in points per game. Like, it transformed their team, just completely transformed. And he was a massive part of that, which was great. So on to the 15-16 season. 15-16. That was season not found. That was season not found, mate. Apparently they had 73 and 9, and then something happened in the finals that I can't remember.
Yeah.
So that was heartbreaking, man, because he got injured in that final, in the closeout, at 3-1 in that closeout. He got J.R. Smith just barreled into his knee. And I knew straight away when that happened. I just went, that's, Draymond Green, the amount of rubbish that went on in that series, and with Draymond Green being suspended and Bogut being out, it was like, there it goes, basically, type of thing. But still, another fantastic season, I think.
Started 70 games.
Yeah, another great season, and managed his body well, managed his game really well. They had historic 73 and 9 season, only to get to the playoffs, and he gets injured in one of the crucial games, and it changes that entire game, and they ended up losing, and obviously they ended up losing the series to Cleveland. And yeah, that one hurt, man. That was, personally for Bogut, that was the real precursor to him leaving, if you know what I mean. Like, he obviously, I don't think he really wanted to leave.
No.
But when when a free agent like Durant comes along, your team, like, it's a business at the end of the day. This is sort of what I was thinking about when the player union stuff and the lockout stuff is going on. Just how quickly the league can just go, right, like, everything's gone.
Yeah.
Like, you're out. See you later. So sometimes when I look at these players, I think to myself, oh, wow, they're being really greedy. Like, when I whinge to you about certain things, and then sometimes I think about, man, like, this league you can just disappear overnight. And
yeah, you get shafted out, or
he basically got boned out. Like, he got boned out of that team for Durant, which, when a player like that comes along, obviously
you can't say no to that.
You can't say no to that. So on July the 7th, 2016, Bogut was eventually traded to the Dallas Mavericks in exchange for a future conditional second-round pick. I think Barnes also went. No, Barnes was a free agent, so that kind of iced that deal a little bit. The trade was made by the Warriors to free up salary space to sign Kevin Durant, and I don't think you turn that down. Like, it sucks,
you can't
man.
turn it down. This is the rise of the super team, the 3 superstar team. Although it didn't work out too well for OKC this year.
Yeah, that was a bit disappointing at the hands of the old Jazz, the old Ingles Jazz.
Jinglin' Joe.
So he made his debut for the Mavericks in their season opener in 2016. He recorded 6 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists in a loss against the Pacers in overtime. I think I watched him a little bit at the Mavs, and it just wasn't there, man. He
didn't want it.
Yeah, he didn't want it. He'd won that championship, the disappointment of the previous season, and then getting boned out of the franchise, basically. I don't think he was really impressed with that. And, it does change the way, like, it really does change the way you think about the game when something gravitational like that affects you. So I think he got injured again. He had a knee injury and he missed 11 games. And then he was traded to Philadelphia, the 76ers.
Who had such an abundance of bloody centres at this time that he was never going to stay.
I think they still had Okafor at that time, didn't they?
Okafor, Holmes,
Nerlens Noel.
Yeah,
Embiid, I think, was
Everyone
injured.
was injured. Yeah. Everyone was injured. I think Rashawn Holmes was playing most of the games when, and I like Rashawn Holmes, but he's not a very defensive player, very good offensive. But, they had centres galore at that stage.
So he was a Philadelphia 76er for 4 days, and then he was waived by the 76ers. And then on the 2nd of March, he signed with the Cavaliers. And
interesting.
A minute into that season, a minute into that first game, he broke his leg. And
man, that's bad luck.
That was I was watching that live, and I remember watching that and just going, God damn it! Like, this guy just can't catch a break, because he would have been an important player for the Cavs. I mean, they were really lacking a center that season. Tristan Thompson wasn't playing that well. I think that was their only real center was Thompson. I think they had Channing Frye at the time. But yeah, he would have been important for the Cavs, especially if they had made it to the finals and played the Warriors. It would have been, you know, would have been an important sort of player for them. So initial X-rays revealed it was a fractured tibia, and he was subsequently taken to the Cleveland Clinic for further testing. There, his tibia was set, and he was scheduled to undergo non-surgical treatment and recovery, but he was ruled out for the remainder of the season, and he was waived by the Cavaliers on the 13th of March, just 11 days later, sorry. So that whole season ended in heartbreak. I mean,
Yeah,
it started poorly, getting traded, and then ended in absolute heartbreak because that injury, it was such a freak injury too, someone coming across and landing on him like that,
Yeah.
breaking his leg. And it kind of looked like that might have been the season where he sort of packed it all in and maybe packed up and left, but he was signed by the Los Angeles Lakers. The Luke Walton connection, obviously going back to the Warriors days, Luke Walton being at the Warriors. He made his debut for the Lakers in their opener, committed 3 fouls and 3 turnovers in a 108-92 loss to the Clippers. And then on the 6th of January, Bogut was waived by the Lakers. And in March, he would announce that he'd not be returning to the NBA because his wife had some troubles with her pregnancy.
And from there, he would never return to the NBA again.
No. And, his loss, or the NBA's loss, and his loss is our gain because we get to watch him now for the Kings, which I think is going to be great.
It is. He's still very much a part of the Boomers rotation.
Yep.
FIBA World Cup next year and on to Tokyo 2020. Which I have to say, I can't be more excited about the Australian team and the prospect of
that's going to be great.
Wiping the floor.
Yeah.
You want to do it. You do.
It'll be great. I think we've got a great team. I mean, we've got probably the best team that we've seen in a while, in a good sort of 20 years. And even some of the NBL talent that's, maybe a part or a step, sort of a tier below, still is decent enough. Like we saw in that Olympics where they played the USA team and they took them almost all the way.
Yeah.
On the back of some Patty Mills magic.
But you look at the Commonwealth Games and a completely NBL made up team wiped the floor with everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean they're playing, probably New Zealand was their hardest team, and that's not saying much. But, the way they've kind of gone through the first round of the FIBA World Cup qualifiers. Pretty exciting that old Thonotron will be making his debut in about 2 weeks for the Boomers.
Yeah, it's good.
And they take on the Philippines, who have Andre Blanche as their. He's a Filipino national.
Oh yeah, nice one.
That's just random. A little bit of random facts for you. So Andre Blanche plays for the Philippines now, but they'll be taking on the Philippines. But Bogut's very much committed to the Australian project over the next 2 years. And getting them to a gold medal in Tokyo.
Yeah, I think we've got a pretty good team. I mean, Bogut, Baines,
Mills, Dellavedova.
Joe Ingles can even play sort of power forward and shooting guard, which is great.
Exum.
Yeah, Maker.
Simmons, Maker.
Yeah, it's looking
Jock
good.
Landau. Good old Jock. Get Jock in for years.
It's looking really good.
We have more. The crazy thing is that potential NBA players this year might miss out in the Australian national team.
Yeah.
That's nuts for a team of 25 million people.
Yeah, definitely.
With basketball not even being on the radar as like the 6th sport in this country.
Mm.
So it is a really, really exciting time to be watching the Boomers. And I shall be, we should be doing a Boomers NBA special wrapping up the Philippines and Japan games.
Yep.
Early July.
Yep.
Which is good.
And don't forget, we're going to cover some of the draft stuff next week.
Yeah, next Friday, covering the draft, hoping someone gets picked up.
Yeah.
Hoping and praying. We think that Maturmaker is probably the most likely to get picked up late in the second round, and potentially McDowell White.
Yeah.
But again, there's other avenues, summer camp, and also Summer League, which will be mid-July as well.
Yep. All right, so that was a pretty long one.
It was a long one. A lot of good info on Bogut.
He had such a great career. I mean, just finishing off, I don't think people really understand, as someone who watched him for 5 years or for 4 years or however long it was, just how much of an influence he really did have as a player. I think it'll get lost in the fact that Golden State's a very team-oriented team, very sort of next man up, strength in numbers type team. Obviously, there's no superstars there, but the influence he had on that team, I think, to him personally, he'll remember that, and he should feel he should get respect from that, at least from the organization, but from people too. I mean, the Warriors are an easy team to hate on, but you can't deny the influence that an Australian had on that team.
Yeah, with the young Steph, young Clay, and with Draymond Green coming out publicly and saying how much of an influence he was personally. I mean, it's good to see. And I can't wait for the NBL season.
I was just going to say the same thing. I'm looking forward to it. I really want to see him play, and I've got my fingers crossed and touching wood. I really hope he stays healthy.
Yeah, 28 games will obviously help that.
Not high octane sort of NBA stuff, but it should be good. And we'll hopefully try and bring some coverage of that as well on this podcast as well.
Yeah, we might be starting a Sydney Kings podcast.
Yeah, maybe we'll see. Maybe we can spin it off to Kings, or hopefully sort of Aussies taking over the NBL. Wait, man, that doesn't really make sense, doesn't it?
Ex-NBA stars taking over the NBL.
Yeah. Anyway. All right, guys, thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later next week.
See ya.